Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to episode 58 of A Daily Dose of Donna. This is my Rooted in Wisdom series. And today, episode 58 is about what does getting triggered really mean? So, earlier today in a post, I had posted this um, inquiry, if you will, a statement around about getting triggered and others triggering you is not their responsibility. And it's honestly a bit of a touchy subject these days around being sensitive to others who have experienced trauma. And certainly, I am all about being trauma sensitive and being trauma informed. I am constantly immersed in learning more about trauma so I can support my clients in a bigger way and share things with you about it. And that's exactly why it's important for us to understand what this whole triggering stuff is about. We all experience it, even if we don't understand it. So, I'm one of those people that usually the big stuff doesn't bother me, and it's the little stuff that does. So, if I'm going to get triggered, it's usually over little things. And so, but what does that really mean, right? When sometimes things that others say or do can bring up these negative emotions, right? Or these thoughts and judgments and perceptions, either about ourselves or others, and even these physical sensations, right? If we've had something really bad happen to us and a similar experience comes up, or we have a memory of it, and we might get this knot in our stomach, or a pain in the back of our neck, or a pain in our knee. It could be any area of our body, our lower back, just some of the most common areas. So, what does that mean? Um, why does this happen, and who should even be responsible in sharing information or the way that we or others behave, knowing that it might trigger me, right? So I'm all about taking self responsibility, but at the same time being sensitive about others, right? So we can't always know what's going on in others' lives. So, of course, being kind and mindful that others have experienced things maybe differently than us, or way more traumatic, or had life experiences that they haven't dealt with. And while it's true, we can't all go around tiptoeing around and apologizing for something we said that somebody else got offended about because it triggered them. In fact, I'm in a group right now on trauma, and there's all this controversy about, well, somebody told this story, and shouldn't they be saying trigger warning because that traumatized me when I read their post? And again, being sensitive to that, you're in the group. You're in a group on trauma. You have to know and appreciate that you're going to read things and be exposed to things that might impact you in a negative way. But in my work, I'm more concerned about, okay, things happen to you, you get triggered when these things happen. Let's heal those things. Let's resolve those things. And how do we do that as individuals? And so let's start from the top. The top is, what is a damn trigger? So if you've heard this, but you don't actually know what it is and why it happens, or, it gets used so loosely, like so many words, right, in our current day vocabulary. So a trigger is really just a mental, a emotional, or a physiological reaction to some stimulus, right? And that stimulus could be something someone said to us, or someone else, we're just hearing it, right? Something that we see. You could see a car accident, and if you've had a traumatic car accident at some point in your life, or someone that you care about did and they got hurt, and that is an unresolved experience in you, seeing a car accident could be a triggering event for you, and you just go, when my son, after my son Lucas passed away, two really triggering things for me were seeing our local ambulance, and not just seeing the ambulance, but seeing it and hearing it with the lights on. I hated it. I hated it. And then the second thing was going in the grocery store and passing the baby aisle. If I smelled the damn baby aisle or just saw the diapers or the baby food, it would trigger me for I don't even know how long. I couldn't even tell you. So I would go to the grocery store and do what most people do to avoid their triggers, right? Avoid that aisle as much as you couldn't get me to walk down that aisle because I didn't want to experience those feelings or have those thoughts and memories come up. So that's what triggering is, right? We're kind of reliving something is causing us to relive a prior traumatic experience. And it doesn't have to be the extreme things that I talked about, right? Like the loss of a loved one or a severe car accident. It could be little things, right? So it's just it, that could just and what those things are a million different things, and I'm going to show you how to tell you how to work on those to identify them yourself. And often we already know what they are, but we don't want to really deal with them because we don't know how. And we're really concerned about what might come up with this if we start digging into that a little bit. So I'm going to help you, and I'm going to help you do it gently and safely, hopefully. I'm not always so gentle and probably don't always feel so safe with my clients or those who go through some of my programs. But we get through it eventually. So, but you can definitely do it gently and safely without feeling like you're going to go over the edge or that you can't deal with it. So I'm going to give you a couple of easy ways to do that. But this stimulating experience can really cause us to go into rage very quickly, right? So it could just be someone not holding the door open for us going into the store or jumping in front of us in line. And I'm using little things, right? But if it's not you, you've probably seen people share it on social media or, in social groups, people bitching about how rude people are. Like, why does that trigger you, right? Like, why are these things coming up for you that you think people are being rude, right? Or that it's inconsiderate? And again, all of these things are going to go back to a root of a value, a belief that was instilled in us, a conditioning, a patterning that we've had throughout our life that we now are making a judgment about others that's in conflict with ours, and that can be triggering. So as I said, it doesn't always have to be a traumatic event. It could also be a misalignment with our own values and beliefs and judgments. And that conflict can cause us to be triggered. And so, all right, so we'll talk about that as well. So, someone triggering you, and this is a good example, right? So, someone that is triggering you is really just a reflection of your own experience that something may be negative that happened to you that is unhealed or unresolved in you, right? Or that conflict within our own values. So when you start to heal, this is the fun part, right? Is that this was so transformational for me when I started doing this healing process and um, doing this inner work, like this self discovery and this self inquiry and kind of questioning why I feel the way I do. Like, what is the root of that? Why am I having these judgments or these beliefs that really aren't even true for me or about another person or an experience, but yet I have them, right? So what I realized is that when we start to heal, it requires a great deal of self awareness and self inquiry. And that opens us up to aspects of ourselves that we haven't explored before, or we may have cut off, or suppressed for self-preservation and self-protection. And we all do that in some way. And so when we don't know how to process these experiences or these strong emotions, then we avoid them or we numb out, right? So we tend to quickly push them down, or when this happens in our earlier childhood, others may do that. And so when we push them down, or when others, have sloughed off our experience, I mean, maybe you fell as a small child and it was really traumatic to you because your knee was skinned or you busted your lip, and it was like, oh, you're fine, get up, go, you know and from that, as a small child, when it feels like, oh, no one cares about me, oh, I'm not important, or it could be perceived as I'm not loved. I mean, a child could perceive that in 20 different ways. It would never be not necessarily be the same for any individual. And that's why we can't say, oh, well, three people experienced the same thing in the same house. So why was it traumatic for one, but not for the other, or, whatever, because we're individuals. We're all unique. We can't say one person's experience would be the same for another going through the same thing. And that's why it is important to be trauma sensitive and trauma informed in understanding these most basic fundamental things about how we as humans experience things differently. What's negative and traumatic and life altering for you could be nothing for another person. So it's not to minimize anyone's feelings or experiences, it's to understand it. But for ourselves, it's to understand that our triggers are our responsibility, and it's a message from our body to say, hey, there's something in there that you haven't dealt with. There's something unresolved. There's something for you to heal. And that trigger is really your body's way of raise. It's an alert. It's like the red siren going off saying, hey, be careful. There's something going on here that's reminding you of this prior negative experience, even if they're completely different, but something about the reminder is similar, and your body remembers. Um, there's a book titled I Moved Tonight. It's over on the other side. The body keeps the score, and I follow so many trauma experts. I can't remember who wrote that one, but the body keeps the score, and the message is that the traumatic experiences that have happened to us that we did not resolve quickly live in the body. They stay in the body. And over time, more traumatic experiences that we don't resolve and process out will pile up and increase the load in the body. And not only is that harmful to our physical health, but if you think about like the weight of one more negative experience, that when something triggers us, we're more likely to, that trigger is going to be bigger, and it could be explosive, right? Because it could be rage, but it could also be great sadness and cause depression. It could be anxiety and cause a panic attack. It could be, what else did I have here? Confusion, or just being really irritable, right? So somebody triggers you and you just pop off with a sarcastic or snappy comment. Other times you could punch somebody in the face, right? I mean, not you, but I mean, we've seen this, right? So understanding your triggers is one of the important things. That triggered me. What was that about? And doing your own assessment about that. So as I was saying, especially when these things occur in early childhood and we're dismissed or forced to stuff down our emotions, before we learn healthy coping and processing strategies. And sometimes when we don't learn them in childhood, ever, we don't know them then and how to do them in adulthood. And And I see that a lot in my coaching. So, um, what does that look like when we're avoiding, when we've had these experiences, but that we don't know how, we haven't learned how to process through them? What do we do as coping strategies as adults? Well, one of the things, these are all things that I have actively seen or personally done myself. So you can decide which ones were me and which ones were someone else that I've witnessed this, and you can share in the comments, and maybe there's a prize or something. I mean, then again, probably not. So anyway, so avoid being alone when awake. So not having a problem sleeping alone. But I see that often, people just stay super busy. They're always out. They're always in a crowd. They're, wherever they can socialize because they can't stand being by themselves. Because when we're by ourselves, what happens? We show up, or even just always having the headphones on and, always some kind of input, or sitting in front of, the TV or whatever it is, any kind of input, so that you're not alone, so that you don't have to be with yourself when shit starts showing up and then you have to start feeling and you don't want to feel. So that would be one strategy for avoiding. And then another is just numbing out. And that could be a lot of things, right? Whatever people numb out with: alcohol, drugs, porn, excessive shopping, I don't know, you name it, right? Self-sabotage, always, putting themselves in a situation where when things start going good, they just, oh, they walk away, they sabotage it, they create a scenario where it doesn't work out. Um, Being self-critical. The next one, critical and judgmental of others, feeling anxious and fearful often. This one is at the top. People with unresolved traumas, and feeling triggered all the time live in this state very often of just being afraid, of like all things. And it doesn't look like they're being afraid. They're very high functioning, but underneath they have this fearful, um, turmoil going on inside that creates this low grade anxiety. And then staying busy to just avoid, any interference of feeling and thinking about negative things. So then that becomes a pattern. And over time, you no longer feel and notice anything going on within the body until you come to one of my classes or become my client, and then I make you feel. Because in order to heal, you have to feel. And one of the ways that you can start doing your own exploration with this is noticing the things that trigger you. Is it things that people say? Is it things that people do? What is it? And just start journaling your own, noticing your own patterns. And with that, then you can start doing that self inquiry. Like, why the fuck do I do this? Like, why do I let that bother me? Like, what was it about that that was a reflection of me? It's always a reflection of something going on when somebody triggers us, that, to look at it in that way. So, on top of journaling, what are your thoughts and beliefs about what just happened? Which is a great way to start that process gently and just looking at those things with no judgment. And then the other one is a couple of tools to reprogram and heal those things, because there's no reason to be triggered, right? There's no reason to keep living with the trauma, whatever those things are. And often we don't even, people often tell me, oh, nothing traumatic happened to me. Um, because our definition of trauma is like some big significant thing, and it's not that. It can often be just these little things, these little messages, or these little kind of micro experiences that happened early enough in our life or throughout time, that happened, that have just built up, that are causing these reactions for ourselves, and toward ourselves and toward others. So reprogramming, that subconscious belief system that's been, embedded there from that experience, and then healing that's living in the body to process it out. And so two tools that are really great for that. One is EFT tapping, the emotional freedom technique. It's a combination of psychological theory and falls under energy medicine. It works with the body's energy system, which is what your body is, which is why it's holding on to that energy from that experience. So you have to work with that. Um, and I want to say this too, because often people will say this to me is that they're trying to resolve a emotional, energetic body problem psychologically. So you can't solve an energy problem, which is your emotions, um, with your mind. You have to work with the energy. And EFT tapping is a tool that does both. They're communicating um, back and forth to help resolve it from the brain, from the subconscious, as well as within the body. And then the second one is hypnosis, which really gets to the subconscious and works on repatterning those beliefs. So those are three really great tools to work with healing the trauma so that you're not triggered. So journaling to start understanding what those patterns are is a great tool, because then when you get to the other solutions, which is either coaching or therapy or doing the EFT tapping and hypnosis, then you know and have identified what those are, that make the process of releasing and healing those things so much easier and faster. All right, so this was a little long tonight, but this whole triggering thing had come up recently, and I wanted to speak to it because I know often we get triggered, and then we've seen it for like the last year and a half, right? Through the political craziness and the whole COVID pandemic, with people just losing their shit and getting triggered and not knowing how to resolve the stuff that's going on within them and all of that. So I wanted to share a little insight, and I hope that was helpful. So that is Rooted in Wisdom, episode 58 for tonight. See you tomorrow.